لا نبي بعد نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اقتفى أثره واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Now, inshallah, we'll continue to read from the book شرح اصول اعتقاد أهل السنة والجماعة للإمام أبي القاسم هبة الله بن الحسن بن منصور الطبري اللالكائي رحمه الله ta'ala, who died in the year 418 after the Hijrah. And we're in that chapter سياق ما ورد أو سياق ما روي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في ثواب من حفظ السنة وأحياها ودعا إليها. The context surrounding what was narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding the reward of those who preserve the Sunnah and those who revive the Sunnah and those who call to the Sunnah. So this chapter is about the reward for those who preserve the Sunnah, maintain it, keep it from one generation to the next. By learning it and teaching it, they preserve the Sunnah. And those who revive the Sunnah. So they revive it through their action and through their encouragement of others to do it. And they call to the Sunnah. They call to it with their action and with their reminding of the people to establish. And so like this, we see that the reward of these individuals is a reward that is based on their statement as well as their action. So it's the reward of those who preserve the Sunnah by their learning it and teaching it and implementing it, and those who revive the Sunnah, bring back what has been abandoned by their suggesting it to others to do, and they're reviving it themselves with their action, as well as those who call to the Sunnah, and they call to the Sunnah with their statements as well as with their actions. And so this is a good reminder that when it comes to the Sunnah, it has this duality of not just being something that you say or that you speak about, but it has to be something that you as well live and embody and you do with your actions. And this is what makes the people of the Sunnah stand out from other than them. And we've taken up until this point several statements from the Salaf regarding their explanation of these concepts. How does the person who calls, revives, and preserves the Sunnah, how do they get rewarded? What is their reward for, etc.? And we reached the statement of the author, rahimahullah ta'ala. He says, أخبرنا محمد بن الحسين الفارسي قال أنبأنا يعقوب بن عبد الرحمن الجصاص قال أنبأنا إسماعيل بن أبي الحارث قال حدثنا إسحاق بن عيسى قال حدثنا مخلد بن حسين عن يونس بن يزيد عن الزهري أنه قال الاعتصام بالسنة نجاة. This statement, he says that Muhammad ibn al-Husayn al-Farisi informed us. He said that Yaqub ibn Abdul Rahman al-Jassas informed us. He said that Ismail ibn Abi al-Harith informed us. He said that Ishaq ibn Isa narrated to us. He said that Makhlad ibn Hussein narrated to us on the authority of Yunus ibn Yazid. Yunus ibn Yazid on the authority of Az-Zuhri, who said that al-i'tisamu bis-sunnah najah. This word al-i'tisam, we see it often, and it's translated as holding on to, right? To hold on to hold on fast. But there's a meaning that is deeper in this word al-i'tisam than is often translated. And these are things that it's important for the individual, the student specifically, that he not rely on understanding the religion solely through translations. And there is room to explore the meanings of the words and what best suits them and the purposes behind using them. And this is especially true in the Arabic language, because we see often that sometimes the English words just don't do justice to the meaning that is trying to be conveyed. And because of this, there's a large room available when it comes to translating a word. But this word, al-i'tisam, i'tasama, wa'tasimu bihablillah, right? And they translate it often as to hold on tightly. And this is valid. But this word, al-i'tisam, it comes from the meaning of the word, the foundation of that word is al-isma. And al-isma, it has a lot of applications. Right? We talk about the ismatul anbiya, the fact that the prophets, peace be upon them, are infallible. I.e., they don't commit major sins, and they are free of making mistakes in the religion. And so this person who has al-i'tisam has kept himself free of making mistakes in the religion. Likewise, from the meanings of al-i'tisam is to protect, right? And to guard. And so this word al-i'tisam, it means to remove. And let's look. I want to do something because I was also thinking about another word. But let's look at how they explain the origins of this word, because it will give you a greater appreciation of what this word asama means. And so Ibn Faris rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, al-ain was-sin wal-mim is a singular meaning, right? The origin conveys a singular meaning that indicates holding on tightly and protection, as well as everything that comes along with that. And the meaning in all of this is one meaning, and that is al-isma, that Allah Azza wa Jal protects the slave from evil that he might fall into. And the slave has i'tasama with Allah when he has gotten Allah's protection and defense. And so this gives us a stronger meaning of this word wa'tasimu, right? Al-i'tisamu bis-sunnah. That you seek out and you defend yourself using the sunnah. And you protect yourself and you guard yourself by holding on to the sunnah. So it requires this, once again, a duality. This i'tisam with the sunnah is an action that you do holding on to it. And in your holding on to it, it gives you this protection against other than it, from that which is evil and undesirable. And so there's only one way to protect yourself from the evils of this life, let alone the evils of the next. And that is that you use the sunnah as your defense, that you defend yourself. We often hear the sunnah and the Quran being referred to as our weapons that we use in establishing the jihad with the tongue and the jihad with the pen, right? وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا, and perform jihad against them using it. So they are weapons on the offense and promoting this religion and calling to it and reviving it and preserving it. But they are also our protection on the defense. And this is from the important things to remember, that not only does the sunnah help you offensively in conveying the message of Islam, but it also helps you defensively by protecting you and keeping you safe from that which opposes Islam. And that's why the author, if you recall with me, he mentioned in the beginning of this book that the usul that we're talking about is holding on to the Quran and the Sunnah and the Sahaba and the consensus of the Salaf, holding on to it until death and abandoning innovation and its people and not listening to it. And so like this, we see that holding on is part of that i'tisam, and using it to push away that which is outside of the sunnah is also part of that i'tisam. And so the Prophet, or as Zuhri rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, al-i'tisamu bis sunnah najah. The one who defends himself using the sunnah will obtain salvation. And salvation, it's to escape harm, right? To be saved from harm. And so the only way to save yourself from the harms of this life, let alone the harms of the next, is with the sunnah. And so here we see the reward of the sunnah is that it keeps the individual safe. It keeps the community safe. It keeps the masajid and the schools and the society at large safe. Safe from external enemies, safe from internal enemies, safe from the shaitan, safe from desire. The thing that ensures our safety is the extent that we not tasimu, that we defend and protect ourselves by holding on to the sunnah. And every time our safety and our salvation is less, then it is a result of our lack of this i'tisam. It is a result of our lack of holding on and defending ourselves with the sunnah. And so now you see the importance of why the brothers and the sisters of ours who constantly remind us about the sunnah, do this according to the sunnah, be on the sunnah, the importance of the sunnah, the threat of innovation, the warning against innovation in its people. Why is it so serious? Because those things are the cause of our salvation. And this is not the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, fahasb, right? As if they're the only ones who said it. Instead, this is from the fundamentals of the Muslims. And it goes all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ and Allah in the Quran. But here we have it from the statement of Az-Zuhri, rahimahullah ta'ala, the leader of the youth of the Tabi'een, where he says, the person who defends himself by holding on to the sunnah obtains salvation, i.e., and there is no salvation in anything other than it. And you might have heard the statement, and perhaps we'll come across it. The sunnah is like the ship of Nuh, Prophet Noah, alayhi salatu wassalam. Man rakibaha najah. Whoever rides on it succeeds. And whoever stays off of it, he is drowned and destroyed. So this shows us the reward of the sunnah, that it gives us safety and salvation in this life, let alone the next. The next narration, the author, he says, أخبرنا أحمد بن عبيد قال أنبأنا محمد بن الحسين قال حدثنا أحمد بن أبي خيثمة قال حدثنا عبد الله بن جعفر قال حدثنا أبو المليح قال كتب عمر بن عبد العزيز بإحياء السنة وإماتة البدعة. Allahu Akbar. He says that Ahmad ibn Ubaid informed us. He said that Muhammad ibn al-Hussein narrated to us. He said that Ahmad ibn Abi Khaythama narrated to us. He said that Abdullah ibn Ja'far narrated to us. He said that Abu al-Malih narrated to us. He said that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz wrote, he proclaimed, he decreed that the sunnah be revived and that the innovation be dealt with or done away with, that it be deadened, right? That you dead the innovation, if you will, right? Where we talk nowadays, dead, that you dead the innovation. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who was the Khalifa of this time, right? He was the Khalifa of the Muslims, if I'm not mistaken, from 98 to 101 Hijri, right? From the Khulafa of Bani Umayyah. And he was from the scholars of Islam, from the Tabi'een. And from the best things that Allah can do for the Muslims is that he provide them a righteous ruler. Because if the ruler is righteous, then the subjects will be righteous. or those under his authority, the ruled, will be righteous. While if the leader or the ruler is irrighteous, then it will lead to the irrighteousness of his subjects or his subordinates. And from the blessings that Allah had on those Muslims during that time is that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was from the best of the leaders. And he was so good as a leader that some of them went even as far as counting him as the fifth of the Khulafa al-Rashidin. And although that is a statement that it's people make it, it's just important to remember that in spite of how great that he was not better than Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, nor was he better than Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr, who are both khulafa before him. But because of how unique he was during his time period in righteousness, especially as a ruler, the people compared him to the rulership of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and Al-Hasan, who were the Khulafa al-Rashidun, right? The rightly guided successors of the Prophet that he mentioned. And from the things that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was known for, then just like how Abu Bakr and Uthman, specifically Uthman, were known for gathering the Quran and preserving the Quran for us, then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, it was during his khilafah or his caliphate that the hadith were really preserved. He proclaimed and he decreed that the hadith be written down. Because before that, people were memorizing hadith, but Umar ibn Abdul Aziz decreed that the people start writing them down, and he dispatched Az-Zuhri and other than him and tasked them with writing down the hadith. And like this, the beginning of the writing of the hadith in the books of hadith began during the time period of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And as we said, this was early on. Umar, he died, if I'm not mistaken, in the year 101 Hijri. From the statements that Umar made during the time when he gave this proclamation is that he said, people need to revive the Sunnah. He proclaimed, he wrote, he decreed that the Sunnah be revived, right? That the Sunnah be done in the open, in front of the people, where everyone can witness it, and it not be concealed in the masajid or in certain circles, at the exclusion of others. He decreed that the Sunnah be done everywhere, that it be revived and enlivened, that it be given life. And the Sunnah is given life from the aspects of the way that the Sunnah is given life is that it is done around the people. And this is something that is important upon the student and the person who adheres to the correct aqidah, is that they take it upon themselves to revive the Sunnah in the circles that they're in by carrying it out with their action and by showing it off around the people. And I don't mean showing off in the intention, I mean showing it off with their action, that they allow the people to see them establishing the Sunnah. Because when the people see the Sunnah being established, then this is from the ways that it revives it and enlivens it in the community. And from the Sunnah being revived and enlivened, then in that is our salvation and the perfections of our community. And it also, he decreed that the bid'ah be done away with, that the bid'ah be deadened, that it be done away with, murdered, that it be done away with is the only word I can think to translate it with right now, right? It be caused to die. It be brought to its death. And this is because just as bid'ah, every time it is enlivened, it destroys and kills off some sunnah. Then likewise, when the sunnah is enlivened, when it is given life, then it kills off some innovation. Because two things can't exist at the same time in the same place. And so if Sunnah is existing there and is alive at that time, at that moment, at that place, then the bid'ah will not have a place to be and it will die off. But if we allow the bid'ah to live in that moment, at that time, in that place, then this will kill off the Sunnah from existing in that place. And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he commanded that the Sunnah be given life and that the innovation be done away with and allowed to die off and killed off, that the innovation be killed off. And a person might ask, well, what is the connection between this and the reward of the one who preserves, revives, and calls to the Sunnah? What is the reward? It doesn't mention anything about the reward in this narration. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz decreed that it be revived and that the Sunnah be, the bid'ah be killed off. Where is the reward of one who does it? You can make general assumptions like the earlier narrations that mention whoever calls to a good thing, then he gets the reward of those who follow them or follow him. And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, by calling to this, gets the reward of everybody who followed it thereafter. And this is why we say that from the best blessings that the Muslims can be shown is that they have a righteous ruler, because that righteous ruler will rectify the community. And this is why from the methodology of the Salaf and the way of Ahl Sunnah is that we make dua for our rulers. And we do not openly go against them on the minbars and on the pulpits, let alone with our hands and our actions actively revolting. And some of the Salaf, they used to say, if I had only one dua, I would make it for the ruler. Because if the ruler is made correct, then everyone under him will be made correct. And so from the mistakes that we see the people doing nowadays is that they make dua against the rulers. And they talk bad against the rulers amongst the people, instead of actively asking Allah to rectify them and give them success and fix and rectify whatever shortcomings they might have. Because in doing so, Islam will be successful and the ruler will encourage the good and the ruler will get the reward for that. And likewise, those who made dua and supported and encouraged the ruler will get the reward of all of those who listen to those rules. So this is one aspect of how you can connect it to the chapter title. The reward of the one who revives the Sunnah. Look at the reward of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz in the history of the Muslims. When he revived the Sunnah, his status was so raised and elevated that they used to count him amongst the Sahaba, even though he was not one of them. And so that is an aspect of the reward that one gets. It will raise his level and his rank in the eyes of the people. Another way that you can look at it, and this might be a stretch, but the reward of reviving the Sunnah is the doing away of bid'ah, meaning the reward is the result. And this is understandable by those who have actually suffered because of bid'ah. When you see the suffering that bid'ah causes in this life for the people who are allowed to establish it in their communities, in their masajid, in their families, in their interactions, and you see the hardship and the burden and the stress that innovation brings with it, then from the reward of establishing the Sunnah is that it gets rid of innovation. And by getting rid of innovation, it gets rid of the stress, the burden, the difficulty, the harm that innovation brings. And therefore, by establishing the Sunnah, an individual lives that life on the Sunnah, bid'ah free, and thus they enjoy a good life. These are just some ways that we can see the connection of this narration to the chapter title. The next narration he mentions, he says, وأخبرنا أحمد وحدثنا محمد قال حدثنا أحمد بن الزهير قال حدثنا سليمان بن حرب قال حدثنا حماد بن زيد عن عاصم قال قال أبو العالية تعلموا الإسلام فإذا تعلمتموه فلا ترغبوا عنه وعليكم بالصراط المستقيم فإنه الإسلام لا تحرفوا الإسلام يمينا ولا شمالا وعليكم بسنة نبيكم والذي كان عليه أصحابه وإياكم وهذه الأهواء التي تلقي بين الناس العداوة والبغضاء فحدثت الحسن فقال صدق ونصح. قال فحدثت حفصة بنت سيرين فقالت يا باهلي أنت حدثت محمدا بهذا؟ قلت لا. قالت فحدثه إذن. This narration is a lovely one, and it brings together that second aspect that we just mentioned in the previous narration. He says that in Ahmed, as informed us, he said that Muhammad narrated to us. He said that Ahmed ibn Zuhair narrated to us. He said that Sulaiman ibn Harb narrated to us. He said that Hamad ibn Zayd narrated to us on the authority of Asim, who said, I said to Abu Aliya, or who said that Abu Aliya said, so this is the statement of Abu Aliya from the Tabi'een, a famous Tabi'i. He said that Abu Aliya said, learn Islam. Learn Islam. Preserve the religion here. The connection here, learning Islam is preserving the religion. Learn Islam. And then once you've learned it, then do not be in desire, then do not be adverse to it. Learn Islam. And once you've learned it, then do not be adverse to it. I.e., once you've learned what Islam requires of you, then do so. Learn Islam. فَإِذَا تَعَلَّمْتُمُوهُ فَلَا تَرْغَبُوا عَنْهُ. Don't desire something other than it. Don't desire something other than it in your beliefs. Don't desire something other than it in your statements. And don't desire something other than it in your actions. Learn Islam. Learn the Sunnah. Learn the Sharia. Learn Iman. And then once you've learned it, then do not desire something other than it. Right? Don't be adverse to it, disillusioned with it, right? Don't give up on it. Stay with it. And this is a great advice to the new Muslim, right? Learn Islam. Don't just accept Islam today and that's it, as if the mission is over. Learn Islam. And then once you learn Islam, then don't be adverse to it, right? Don't give up on it. Don't desire something other than it. Once you learn, and this is for the new Muslim as well as the one who has accepted Islam or been a Muslim since birth. Don't want something else besides Islam. If you know what Islam says about something, statements, actions, or belief, then accept that and establish that. Don't say, well, what about what those people do? Or, how about how they do it, right? Worry about what Islam says about how to handle this action. Learn Islam and then don't desire something other than it. He says, and upon you is the straight path. It is obligatory upon you that you follow the straight path. And for all of you all who follow with us along in the book, Iqtida as-Sirat al-Mustaqim, the necessity of following the straight path, we said in the beginning of that book that what is the straight path? Here, Abu Aliya tells us and gives us a statement of the Salaf, confirming to the definition that we gave. He said, and upon you is the straight path, because indeed it is Islam. The straight path is Islam. Every other path is crooked. It's not the straightest route. It's not flattened, so it's ups and downs, peaks and valleys, while Islam is a flat, easy to traverse path. The other paths are rigid and difficult. The other paths aren't straight. They bend, they twist, they curve, and they don't go straight to their destination. They go in a roundabout way if they ever reach there at all. and they usually don't. The other paths aren't a sirat. They're not vast and open and easy, not causing congestion or difficulty therein. The other ones are tight, difficult paths to be on. They're not well lit. They're not well marked. What Islam is, it is as-sirat al-mustaqim. It has all of these qualities. He said, so upon you is the straight path because it is Islam. So do not deviate. فَلَا تُحَرِّفُ الْإِسْلَامِ يَمِينًا وَلَا شِمَالًا. Don't deviate from Islam to the right or to the left. Don't go off the path to the right side nor to the left side. This path is straight. It does not require any alterations. He says, and upon you is the Sunnah of your Prophet. In addition to following Islam, from the things that will help you follow Islam is the Sunnah of your Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, وَالَّذِي كَانَ عَلَيْهِ أَصْحَابُهُ, as well as that which his companions were upon. So this is a foundation from the tabi'een, like Abu al-Ali, and we'll see others establishing the methodology of the Salaf, right? Al-Minhaj al-Salafi. What does it mean to be Salafi? Upon you is the Islam, according to the Sunnah and the way of the Sahaba. So it's not something that Ibn Taymiyyah or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab or even Imam Ahmed originated. This goes all the way back to the beginning. Upon you is Islam because it is the straight path. And if you know about the straight path, it's also been said that it's the Quran. And as well as upon you is the Sunnah of your Prophet, as well as that which his companions were upon. He says, وَإِيَّاكُمْ هَذِهِ الْأَهْوَاءِ, and I warn you from these desires, right? Take precaution against these desires. And so if we go back to the origin or the beginning of the book, he told us the fundamentals: Quran, Sunnah, Sahaba, way of the Salaf, hold fast to it, avoid innovation and die upon that, avoid innovation in its people. Here, Abu al-Aliya is telling us the same thing. Upon you is Islam, the Sunnah, the way of the Sahaba, and take precautions against the people of innovation, the desires. If you're with us in Iqtida, you know that everything that isn't Islam and everything that isn't the way of the Prophet is considered to be ignorance and desire. He said, and I warn you against these desires that cast enmity and hatred amongst people. When we talked about what is the reward of reviving the Sunnah in the last narration, we said that the reward of the Sunnah is that it gets rid of bid'ah. And that in itself is a reward because bid'ah causes harm and causes evil and causes difficulty. Here, Abu al-Aliya is saying the same thing. That he's warning us against the innovations because these innovations, they throw enmity and hatred between people. They cause enmity and hatred amongst the people. And wallahi, you see this to be the truth. When you look at the people of innovation, they are always at odds with each other, as well as the people of the Sunnah. So the Mu'tazila, his enemy is the Ash'ari, and the Ash'ari, his enemy is the Mu'tazili. And the Sufi, their enemy is the scholastical individuals, and the scholastical individuals, their enemy is the Sufi. And like this innovation, it always leads you at the end of the day to saying whoever isn't like me, then he's a kafir. And that's why you find that one of the things that all of the people of innovation usually agree upon is the takfir of everybody besides them. And this is what makes them so easily cast these aspersions against the people of the Sunnah. But the reality is that the people of the Sunnah are from the most cautious against casting the title of disbelief upon anyone. And we take the most cautious approach in doing so. And not only that, you find is that when I know that somebody is on the Sunnah, it removes the enmity and the hatred that I have for them, even if we disagree. And from the things that a brother of mine, may Allah preserve him, said a long time ago to me, and I see it to be the truth. How can you remain an enemy with someone who, when it comes time for the salat, you stand foot to foot and shoulder to shoulder with them? It makes it hard to keep that enmity amongst you. And just in that small act of following the Sunnah, you see how it removes innovation and desire and enmity and hatred. A brother and myself could have gotten into a large argument in front of the masjid, angry at each other. But because I follow the Sunnah and he follows the Sunnah, when the salat is called, we're going to go line up. And when we go line up, we're going to stand foot to foot and shoulder to shoulder. No matter how mad at him I am, I'm going to stand in the salat foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. And when we do that, what did the Prophet tell us about doing that? Straighten your rows or Allah will divide between your hearts. But when we straighten our rows, we don't leave any room for the shaitan, and we find our hearts united. And so being on the Sunnah removes enmity and it removes hatred. But that is only for the one who is on the Sunnah. And this is why it is always sad to see brothers and sisters who both parties are on the Sunnah falling into the deception of Iblis and trying to kick each other out of it. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is faultless. And myself and my brothers have deficiencies. All of us have deficiencies that if we knew about each other's secret lives, no one would probably listen to any of us. And may Allah make our secret better than our apparent. All of us have sins. All of us have mistakes. All of us have deficiencies. But from the things that are sad is when we see two brothers who want to be upon the Quran and the Sunnah according to the way of the Sahaba, avoiding innovation, and then they start to kick each other out because of mistakes that they make. Yes, it is unfortunate that some of our brothers make these mistakes. But what is also unfortunate is that instead of looking for a way to remove the enmity and remove the hatred, we instigate it and make it bigger instead of looking and trying to bring rectification. Only the Sunnah can rectify us. But this is how the Sunnah rectifies us. And this is something that often people disregard. They say the statement often, well, we can only unite with people on the Sunnah. Yes, that is true. But it's not just because they're on the Sunnah that unites us. It's because when they are on the Sunnah and we're on the Sunnah, we're going to work at uniting. And we're going to look at things from the lens of how to approach this according to the Sunnah. And that's going to make us unite. Not because we're going to agree about everything. Not because we're going to see everything the same way. But because when I know he's on the Sunnah, I'm going to be tolerant. And I'm going to work with them. And I'm going to help fix a shortcoming if possible and overlook if not when it's tolerable. And that's why Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Only the believers are brothers. إِنَّمَا أَدَاةُ الْحَصْرِ. Only the believers are brothers. And so when we find ourselves separate from our brothers upon the minhaj, then it means one of three things. There is a deficiency in their iman. There's a deficiency in our iman, or there's a deficiency in all of our iman, them and us. And how often is the third the actual case? Because only somebody with deficient iman would think that it's completely his brother's fault. And so therefore we understand that the more we have this iman, the more we have this sunnah, the tighter our brotherhood is going to be. But that is only for the people of the sunnah. As far as the innovation, then by default, it causes enmity and hatred amongst its followers. And so if you find yourself going into enmity and hatred with people, then know that there is an aspect of people on the sunnah, then know that there's an aspect of desire that has crept in here, whether it is jealousy, whether it is a desire for rank and position, whether it is a desire for wealth, whether it is partisanship. There is something that has creeped in here to cause this separation. Because if not, then the dua of the believer is رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Oh, our Lord, do not put in our hearts any rancor towards those that have iman. In any circumstance, this is what Abu Aliyah said. He said, and I warn you from those desires that cast enmity and hatred amongst the people. The person narrating this was Asim. Asim, he said, so I told this to Al-Hasan. Yani I told this narration of Abu Aliyah to Hasan al-Basri. And that is the conveying of what one scholar said of goodness to another scholar, right? Spreading the information. And you would find the scholars receptive of this, right? What one scholar said of benefit, they would desire to hear what that scholar said. So Asim, he said, I told this to Hasan, yani Hasan al-Basri. And he said that he has told the truth and given sound advice. Meaning this statement that Abu Aliyah mentioned is the truth, and he's given you sound advice. He said, and I told it to Hafsa bint Sirin. Hafsa bint Sirin was a scholar, a female scholar, who was the sister of Muhammad ibn Sirin. And so here we see Asim telling this female scholar the information of Abu Aliyah, right? And they were all in Basra at this time. You'll find that the community might have not been as big as you might think. And so a man can talk to a woman and tell her information that is beneficial as long as proper etiquette and hijab and things like that are observed. And so when Asim told this to Hafsa bint Sirin, she said to him, O Bahili, O person from this area, Bahila, did you tell this to Muhammad? Did you tell Muhammad ibn Sirin this information yet? And so Asim, he said, no, I didn't tell him. And so Hafsa, she said, go and tell him then, right? I hurry up and go tell him this information is important. I want him to know it. And so we see how they were staunch and diligent on the preserving of this knowledge and the transmission of it. Now we'll take one more narration. He says, أخبرنا أحمد بن أبي طاهر الفقيه قال أنبأنا عمر بن أحمد قال حدثنا علي بن محمد بن أحمد بن يزيد الرياحي قال حدثنا أبي قال حدثنا يحيى بن سليم قال حدثنا أبو حيان البصري قال سمعت الحسن يقول لا يصح القول إلا بعمل ولا يصح قول وعمل إلا بنية ولا يصح قول وعمل ونية إلا بالسنة. He says that Ahmed ibn Abi Tahir al-Faqih, Abu Hamid al-Isfarayini, right? A famous scholar, a Salafi scholar. Abu Hamid al-Isfarayini, Ahmed ibn Abi Tahir, was from the teachers of al-Lalaka'i. He said that, and some of them say that, some of them pose that this is where al-Lalaka'i really developed his outlook on the correctness in the Sunnah, because Abu Hamid al-Isfarayini was a person who was staunch on the Sunnah, and they used to say about him that he would like purposely go out of his way, if you will, to refute people like al-Baqillani, right? Al-Baqillani was a scholar from the Maliki madhab who was from the famous Ash'ari scholars of his time, and Abu Hamid al-Isfarayini used to go out his way just to refute him, right? Just to make sure that people know that what he was on wasn't the Sunnah. And they questioned him about that, and he would say a statement like that. Just, I want to make sure that people know that what he is calling to isn't what we're upon. And so some people pose that it's perhaps from here that Al-Lalaka'i rahimahullah ta'ala developed his sense of importance of what is the Sunnah and being upon the Sunnah from this great Imam Abu Hamid Ahmed ibn Abi Tahir al-Isfarayini. So Al-Lalaka'i, he says that Ahmed ibn Abi Tahir al-Faqih informed us. He said that Umar ibn Ahmed informed us. He said that Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmed ibn Yazid al-Riyahi narrated to us. He said that my father narrated to me. He said that Yahya ibn Sulaym narrated to us. He said that Abu Hayyan al-Basri narrated to us. He said, I heard al-Hasan, yani Hasan al-Basri. I heard al-Hasan saying, statements are not valid unless they have actions. And statements and actions are not valid unless they have proper intent, unless you have proper belief and reason behind the action. And statements and actions and intent are not valid unless they are upon the Sunnah. And so this is a great statement from the Imam Hasan al-Basri, from the Tabi'een, that all of us have probably heard before, but it shows us the reward of the one who preserves, revives, and calls to the Sunnah. And it is that the Sunnah is the component or the prerequisite in having your belief, your statements, and your actions accepted by Allah. And that none of them will be accepted by Allah without Sunnah. And so therefore we see that from the reward of the Sunnah is that your actions will be accepted by Allah. And so Al-Hasan al-Basri, he said that statements are not valid without actions. And statements and actions are not valid without intent. And intent, it can mean here the reason why you're doing it, i.e. who you're doing it for, or what exactly are you doing. And it can also mean just more general, the belief that you have, which goes into the reason of who you're doing it for, right? Your belief in Allah. And he says in statements and actions and intent, which themselves comprise Iman, statements, actions, and belief, then they are not valid without Sunnah. And so your belief, your Iman is not valid until it is an Iman according to the Sunnah. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسِ قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون ولكن لا يعلمون. Allah says in the Quran, and when it's said to them, have Iman, the way the people have Iman, they say, shall we have Iman the way the fools have Iman? Talking about the hypocrites. Allah says, indeed, it is they who are the fools, i.e. the hypocrites, who don't have Iman like the Sahaba, but they do not know. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And so this shows us that none of these things are accepted and instead are from ignorance and foolishness until they correspond to the Sunnah. And he says, lastly, أخبرنا علي بن أحمد بن حفص قال أنبأنا عبد الله بن يحيى الطلحي قال حدثنا الحضرمي قال حدثنا العلاء بن عمرو قال حدثنا يحيى بن هاني عن مبارك عن الحسن أنه قال يا أهل السنة ترفقوا رحمكم الله. فإنكم من أقل الناس. الله أكبر. Subhanallah. He says that Ali ibn Ahmed ibn Hafs informed us. He said that Abdullah ibn Yahya al-Talhi informed us. He said that Al-Hadrami narrated to us. He said that Al-Ala ibn Amr narrated to us. He said that Yahya ibn Hani narrated to us on the authority of Mubarak, on the authority of Al-Hasan, Hasan al-Basri. He said that, O people of the Sunnah, be compassionate to each other. How many times can we talk about this? How many times can we remind each other about this? from the foolishness of our generation, i.e. the generation that I'm a part of, is that when the likes of Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, rahimahullah ta'ala, talked about something like this, and even after him, the likes of Sheikh Saleh Suhaimi, hafidhullah ta'ala, talked about something like this, you find them in circles saying, oh, the Sheikh doesn't know what's going on. The Sheikh is unaware of these affairs. The Sheikh doesn't understand the reality, what's happening in the field, on the ground. Allahumma musta'an. This statement, how many times does this statement have to be made? It's made by Allah in the Quran. It's made by here the tabi'een from the time of the Prophet until today, and the scholars have consistently told us, the people of the Sunnah, taraffaqu rahimakumullah, be compassionate with each other. May Allah have mercy on you. It's from the most treacherous actions of ours that we abandon our brothers. And this goes for quote unquote both sides. That we abandon and forsake our brothers, that everything is looking for the fault of our brother and trying to pit one another against each other and taking sides and having these evil looks at each other, and all of this stuff that it exists in our field that we live in nowadays. Unfortunately, sometimes some of us do these things. And in spite of the fact that the Salaf, they used to say, Ya Ahl Sunnah, O people of the Sunnah, if you're Salafi, if you're trying to be on the Quran and the Sunnah the way Hassan al-Basri was, then Ya Ahl Sunnah, taraffaqu rahimakumullah. Be compassionate with each other. May Allah have mercy on you. Now, why is everything always looking for the fault and tearing down? Show compassion to each other. If you can help, help. If you can assist, assist. If you can give good advice from a mistake, give good advice. But why are we trying to, sometimes, and I'm not putting this on everyone, but why do we sometimes see people who want to destroy communities, break people up, people who never had any problems before? I'll talk about my community. There was a time when my community had no separation and no division. And everybody's agenda and desire was to be on the Sunnah. And our small community, 20, 25 people maybe, until the fitna of certain people who cause fitna entered amongst them, and then it divides a community. For what purpose? Ya Ahl Sunnah, taraffaqu rahimakumullah. O people of the Sunnah, show compassion to each other. May Allah have mercy on you. Because you are the fewest of people. A community that had maybe 15, 20, 25 people who had a strong desire to practice this. Alhamdulillah, the community has grown since then. But in a time where there's maybe, 20, 25 people, 30 people who want to really follow the Sunnah, right? Not just the average general Muslim who, mashallah, who is around and has actually grown into becoming that, but those individuals who, if you ask them, they would be quote unquote card-carrying Salafis. Traveling together, learning together, classes together, halaqat, durus, mashayikh. No fitna. None of the issues that deal with this country or that country, this person or that person. And then the fitna enters into them. And you see the enmity, the desire causes that enmity and that hatred. Secret WhatsApp groups, private communications, abandoning the masjid, going to a different place, going to a masjid where, in their opinion, the people who go there are innovators, instead of going to the Salafi masjid because it's safer, so it's not confusing. Backbiting, deception, all of these things, where does it come from? It comes from the desires that enter upon people. In spite of the fact that Hassan al-Basri told us what? Ya Ahl Sunnah, taraffaqu rahimakumullah. Be compassionate to each other. If I see my brother with a mistake, instead of talking about him behind his back and in warning in a situation that doesn't require it, go to him, talk to him, discuss it with him. See if he made a mistake or if he has a reason. Is he independent in his position, or does he follow and listen to a scholar who has said the position that he said? And do you understand that the scholars can disagree? Tarafaqu, be compassionate with each other. Learn these lessons. May Allah have mercy on you. You're compassionate with your kafir coworker, your kafir employer, but with your Muslim brother, you're the hardest of person. This is the opposite of what Allah mentioned in the Quran. Ruhama bainahum, right? They're compassionate amongst each other, stern against the kafir. Allah musta'an. He said, yo, people of the Sunnah, have compassion to each other. May Allah show compassion or mercy to you. And who of us is not in need of the mercy of Allah? So from the reward of following the Sunnah, the way that we should, showing mercy and compassion, the reward is that Allah will show mercy to us. And we need it because we are the fewest of people. You go to any community, the people of innovation, their masajid, their communities, their organizations, their weekend schools, all of their regular schools, all of these things, you find them in greater numbers. But because we can't get our act together amongst ourselves at times, and we don't have this compassion, right? And don't divide or argue amongst yourself and thus become weak, and your strength will go away. We ask Allah to gather our hearts upon goodness, to rectify that which has corrupted amongst us, and to bring us all back to the Sunnah in a beautiful way. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I apologize for the long-windedness and getting off topic, but this statement is beautiful, man. Ya Ahl Sunnah, have compassion to each other because you are from the fewest of people. Hasan al-Basri. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. نعم لا يعلمه. نعم صح لا يعلمه. جزاكم الله خير. بارك فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.